Hi everybody, welcome to Paul Programs, your spot for learning more about game mechanics and game design. So, today we're going to roll out as a squad and take a look at some squad mechanics, how they're implemented in the games, and how to use them in your own. Let's get started. If you're interested in learning more about game design, game mechanics, let me know what kind of mechanics you'd like to learn more about below in the comments. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to know when new videos drop. With that out the way, let's dive into squad mechanics. What are squad mechanics? Now, it's going to vary from game to game, how it's implemented, and so on and so forth, but basically it's working as a team with other players usually. One example is Destiny, where you have different classes that have to work together in order to accomplish certain missions, goals, tasks, things like that. Another good example is Splatoon, where you're put into a squad with several other players, and your goal is to cover as much map with as much of your paint color as possible. And everyone can choose either the same weapons or different weapons, but there are benefits from choosing other weapons and having different play styles. And it's not like most other squad shooters and things like that, where the goal is to defeat the enemy, you win. It's more of controlling more of the map, getting it painted the way you want. And this is just a few of the games that use squad mechanics, but let's actually take a further look at some other examples. Okay, so the first game we're actually going to take a look at is Destiny 2. And this is a good example of a squad shooter, and it contains different roles, character classes, subclasses, and we'll dive in first, really taking a look at its classes and subclasses. So with that, there are three different class types. Right here we have the Titan, but then there's also the Warlock and the Hunter. Each class has its own variations from skills, like the Titan has more of a glide jump, while the Warlock falls gracefully, and the Hunter has your traditional double jump. But besides that, they also have different functions, abilities, and things like that. And then there's subclasses. This is what's used to separate each player who may be of the same class type. And this is just a quick example of just how you can diversify your characters even within the same class. You can create subtypes that have different abilities. You can choose and customize those abilities and decide which one best fits your style or benefits the team as a whole. And then you can take it into different player versus environment modes like raids, strikes, or you can take it into competitive modes like control, and then basically your standard Trials of Osiris elimination, things like that. But each character and role can vary to give your team a unique composition that benefits and provides different pros, cons, and allows you to compensate for those in a unique way. The next game we're going to take a look at with squads is Mass Effect. And it's very unique because it is a single player RPG, but you still have squad mechanics because it plays like a third person shooter. And in this case, we have our squad selection screen, and you have different characters that have different abilities, bonuses, things like that. And the main thing is creating a balanced squad that you can take with you on the different missions you'll be taking on, because your character, Shepard, also has a class and mechanics tied to themselves. And with that, you're able to create unique combinations, find ways to compensate for weaknesses, or to really heavy up on a particular skill set so you can mow down with that. But the way the enemies are built, you'll need a mix of abilities to deal with different shield typings, different ability typings, different enemies that move from close to fast really quickly. And this is basically an example of how you can, between areas you go to, set up your squad. So in this case, we're going to go with a good old classic squad of Garrus and Liara. Okay, so the last game I want to go into is Overwatch. And here we basically have our different character and class types down below, our damage, tank, support characters. And basically, you would choose what the team needs, as it shows right here, to basically provide the appropriate support. So with that, let's actually jump in. And again, each character is going to have their own roles, abilities, and your job is basically to kind of fill in what the team needs to help provide what needs to be done to help out. So hopefully that gives you a great look at how roles and how squad-based games can be built and constructed, or at least how they have been so far. Minus your own unique ideas that you may be working on right now. Right. So with those examples, hopefully you were able to learn a little bit more about how squad mechanics are used in other games. But now the juicy part. Let's actually think about how we could design our own game with squad mechanics. Let's talk about how we could design our own roles for different squad members in our own game. And with that, we want to take into consideration how we want to vary these roles. Some games, it's based on the equipment you wear. Other games, it's based on a specific type of role you choose. In our game, we want to create an infiltration-style PvE game, player versus environment, where you have a group of players that each have a different role, and the roles have different responsibilities, skills, things like that. We have our hacker, whose job is to basically infiltrate into systems, maybe turn off cameras, short circuit things, basically allow ways for the other players to gain advantages or do what they have to do. Next is the sneak. This is someone who's more responsible for maybe unlocking doors by sneaking into pathways and through things that the other two players may not be able to get through or reach. Maybe they're more agile, maybe they have lockpicking abilities. This is a class that's job is to stay in the shadows but open up ways or handle things that the other two may not be able to. Last would be our frontline. This is basically the tank, your frontline fighter, maybe your warrior. Soldier is something like in Mass Effect. Basically, they're out there to just be in the front, cause chaos, fight, maybe clear a way through like enemy lines, or defend the hacker if they're doing something, or provide a diversion for the sneak. Their job is basically support through a heavy-handed firing. But not only do we have to talk about like the potential skills and abilities they may have, each role may have its own specific type of gear. This goes back to the idea that maybe some roles have specific weapons, different tools that they could use in the world, different like skills, things like that. Something that makes that character role unique. And that's really what we want to take into consideration when we design roles for things like squad games. That covers how we can design our own game, build our own squad mechanics, and create something kind of interesting, unique, and kind of leverage in any ideas you may have of your own. But this at least gives you a foundation to start with. But that covers the design side. How would we actually code squad mechanics, or at least the different roles in it? And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about inheritance. Not getting rich because your rich family or uncle leaving you a lot of money. A different kind of inheritance. We're going to be talking about the kind that most developers and coders have to learn. And that's basically inheriting stats and attributes from one data object into another. So there may be some of the same elements that are shared, but why talk about it? Let's actually dive into some code and take a look right now. Speaking about squads and their roles in a game, I wanted to talk about the principle of inheritance in coding. So for you coders, we're basically going to talk about, or those interested in coding, we're going to talk about roles, how you can develop them, how you build your base class, and kind of understand the idea of how inheritance works, making use of that base class as a setup or build out to what your role is going to be. In this case, we have our main role on the left. And what this is this is going to be the basics of what every role should contain. You may have a name to represent the role, specific skills that the role will contain, gear that the role can use or has on them, and then you may provide them with a basic ability that basically allows that role to use abilities. On the right side, though, you may have something a little more detailed. We have a hacker class, and that's going to basically inherit a lot of the main information from role. It's going to have name. It's going to have its own specific skills. It's going to have its own set gear. These are things that you'll set specifically for this because you're going to want to make sure that that specific class and role has the things that it needs. And when you have your usability, you're probably going to want to override what it does because a hacker using an ability may be different than something like our frontliner using an ability. Those abilities are going to vary, so they may have very specific things they do. And then the other thing is they may have different passive abilities. And in this case, we set that passive ability to be shown in there with our detect hack device. But in other cases, you could create something as simple as on the main role, passive ability. And then on there, we can override on our hacker side and set what that passive ability actually does. Because again, for each role and class, they're going to behave differently and they're going to have their own unique things that they do. But having at least a template that you can start building off of is one of the best parts of inheritance, and having like that base class you can start from. So hopefully that helps understand inheritance and some of how you can actually use it in coding your games and building out roles for a squad shooter or RPG or anything. That covers our look at how you can design and code your own roles that you can use in your own squad game. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you all next time.